Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another thought-provoking episode of High Vibin' It. We are here today, your hosts, Lindsay, she's an awesome hypnotherapist. Kelsey, that would be me. I'm a transformation facilitator. We'll just keep it at that for keeping it short. And today we wanted to dive into the topic of narcissism versus self-love because lately in my work as a self-love coach and advocate, and Lindsay comes up against this a lot too in her hypnosis practice, it's like people having this limiting belief or this fear that if I love myself too much, I'm going to become a narcissist, which I never realized that people actually had this as a valid fear. When it kept coming into my sphere, I was very surprised. I was like, whoa, I did not realize so many people were scared that if they love themselves, they would become a narcissist or they would be viewed as a narcissist from
Yeah.
other people, like maybe misunderstood and made out to be a narcissist when they actually aren't. So we thought it would be a really powerful and intriguing conversation to just dive into the differences and really clear this up once and for all, because it's definitely very, very far from the truth. In fact, I would say, just to give a thesis to this whole episode, narcissists and self-lovers, we will call them, people who have healthy self-love, are basically the opposite. And I would
Yeah.
say narcissism is a manifestation of a lack of self-love. So we're going to be just diving into this. And if this sounds interesting to you, then stick with us for the hour, half hour, however long we go.
So I'm like chomping at the bit here. There's
Yes.
so much that we kind of, me and Kelsey kind of like fleshed it out very in a small way before we hit record. And I'm like, let's just hit record because there's so much to talk about. But when we were talking before we hit record, when you did seem quite surprised that people have this thought, and I don't know the full extent of how Kelsey grew up, but I know that we are similar in a lot of ways. I know one of the ways I grew up was don't be braggy, okay? Don't be overconfident, don't and if you think good thoughts, you're jinxing it, all of these little things that we hear. I still think that sometimes. Like I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want to jinx it. I know we think these thoughts, or if we feel too good, or if we are too happy or too proud, it's seen as a bad thing. And so of course, it can stem into things like, well, if I love myself too much, then I'm going to turn into a narcissist. And we were also talking before the show about the myth of Narcissus, who was I think he's a Greek god. Probably should know the basics, but he was this Greek god named Narcissus who was told he's the son of, I think, a sea god or something, and he was told by a seer when he was young that he would live a very long life as long as he never recognized himself. Think about that for a second, guys. You will live a very long life if you don't actually recognize yourself. So you'll live long, but you won't be full. You won't be as fulfilled as you could be. I want everybody to think about this fear for a second. Has this ever come up for you where you think, if I love myself or if I'm overconfident, it's going to somehow come back to bite me in the ass? I'm almost positive everybody has felt this way at one point. So what happened was Narcissus ended up looking at himself in a pond or some body of water, which is interesting because his dad was a sea god or an ocean god, and he just fell in love with his reflection, his outer reflection. So in this myth, it's very much talking about beauty and physical beauty, but
And vanity.
vanity. And he loved it so much, his reflection, that he never moved again, meaning he starved to death staring at his own reflection. So think about what this myth tells us, right? Like, don't be overconfident. Don't love yourself. Don't. And again, this is vanity, but I think, it can be taken much, much deeper. And I think it was meant to be taken much, much deeper. Don't recognize your own true power because you will die.
Well, and I think we can also explore the differences between self-love and vanity, because I think people group confidence, vanity, lack of humility. They would put all that in the same cup and call it self-love, when
Absolutely.
really they're all very different things.
Oh, they love themselves. Well, yeah. Isn't that the name of the game? Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard Abraham Hicks or some sort of thought leader in some self-help situation that says that's the name of the game. The reason we come here is to love ourselves, those around us, is to experience that love and to reach the fullness of what we really are, our highest potential. It's impossible to do that, just so you know, if you don't have a full and clear picture of who and what you actually are. And when you know what that is, you can't help but love yourself. Now, I think that it's very important that we talk about the difference between self love and narcissism. So, Kelsey, self love queen, what is self love? If we don't know what it is, what is it? What do we want people to know about it?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple different basic definitions we can give just to explore the topic and the differences. So I would categorize love in general as taking something or someone in as a part of yourself, right? If I love Lindsay, then I take positive
If,
ownership of her when,
if,
because okay, if is a bad word in this instance. So I'm trying to give an example. So because I love Lindsay, her well being is my well being, right? She's like an extension of me. Or even if I love a painting that I created, and I really want to protect it and make sure it doesn't get wet and make sure nobody ruins it because it came from my heart. It's an extension of myself. It's a part of me. If you love your dog, you want to take good care of your dog because your dog's well-being is your well-being. So from that definition of love, to love something or someone is to take it in as a part of yourself. It's a form of inclusion. It's a form of all encompassing. It has that energy of, encompassing everything and everyone. So that's like the more spiritual, truer definition of love. So then to apply it to self love would be to do that with yourself, to care about yourself, to make your own well being important to you, to make your needs important to you. There's a million different ways that people express this. People who love themselves care about how they feel, they go for what they want, they can set healthy boundaries. It's not that you think you're more important than other people. In fact, it's that you make yourself just as important as everybody else.
mm-hmm.
And
Right.
from a more macro level, self-love, okay. So in the micro, self-love is loving of yourself, right? So loving your parts, loving who you are, loving who you're becoming, loving yourself through hard stuff. But on the macro spiritual level, if everything is one, right? If that rock is one with you and you're one with other people and everything is one consciousness, then self-love is really just love, right? And from a law of attraction standpoint, the more you practice loving yourself as a person, as a unit, as this one entity, as this fractal of God, the more that you love everything, right? The bigger your capacity to love yourself, the more your capacity to love other people, your friends, your family. The bigger your capacity to have compassion and forgiveness for yourself, the easier it is for you to do it for other people. So really, once we understand this baseline about self-love, that it actually makes you better at relating, and we look at narcissism, which they say is a personality disorder, but I would really categorize it as like a relating disorder. Because I feel like not all narcissists are super narcissistic all the time. I think it comes out more in certain relationship dynamics.
Okay. I think that you're absolutely correct. Yeah, because
Yeah,
everyone brings out a different side of us. I'm this way with Kelsey. I'm a different way with my husband. I'm a different way with my kids. The
right.
point
And
is
I
to
think,
surround yourself with people that make you the best version of yourself.
and to give another example, like how many times have you been in a relationship where you got really codependent? Or maybe you got really narcissistic, but that's not how you are all the time with everybody. It was just the dynamic of the relationship.
There was a quote, like a something on Instagram I read that I have been waiting for someone to say, but of course I won't say it first. Maybe I should have. You know what? Next
Just
time I
say it,
will.
girl.
Somebody said, unpopular opinion, everyone is toxic sometimes. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God, there has been nothing more true ever. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think we all have, if we're paired up with the wrong person, we could be our own worst nightmare. And I think that that's okay to recognize. I think that we need to recognize that because nobody is just toxic. Nobody is just non-toxic. I think because we live in a world of contrast, like me and Kelsey talk about all the damn time, we are experiencing it all, and we are living it all. It's just that's where the challenge is. Let me surround myself with people who bring out the best in me. Now, we are not saying that every narcissist is just with the wrong person. That's not what we're saying. And if you have been with a narcissist, oh my God, that is not what we're saying at all. I think that some people are more predisposed. I just don't think that anyone is purely absolved all the time from this sort of behavior. It's just
It's a
recognizing
sliding scale, right? Like anything.
Yeah.
It's a sliding scale. So yeah, maybe some people are narcissistic 1000% of the time. Maybe some are only 10% of the time. And then it varies like to what degree, right? Like how intense is the narcissism? Not just like how much of the time are people expressing it. But I think to categorize it as a personality disorder, well, okay, I love my therapist out
We're
there.
not
And I know
psychologists. We're
and
not psychologists.
we're not
so
psychologists, but I think part of the beauty of having a different perspective than a psychologist is that it opens up the world to new ideas. Because I
Yeah.
think, what is the book called that they diagnose everyone from?
DSM-4, is that what that is? Is that what I'm
Yeah, I
thinking?
think that's what it's called. I'm probably not
DSM-5?
making a very strong argument by not knowing what this book is called. But what the point I'm trying to get at is sometimes it can be helpful to label things as a disorder. Yes. Other times to label someone as disordered when really they're just stuck in a bad dynamic or
DSM-5. Yeah.
they've practiced these habits, I don't think is always the most beneficial. So anyway, we could go on a whole side tangent about that, but we
I
won't. We're going to stick on topic. And I wanted to say, to add on to what Lindsay said, it is important to recognize, you know, our non-goodness. It's important for us to recognize if we're exhibiting unhealthy behaviors, and this actually makes you a safer person to relate with. It's the
Yes.
people who can't recognize their badness. It's the people who can't recognize their mistakes. It's the people who won't look at the parts of them that aren't good that are the most dangerous to be in relation to because they don't even know,
Or they won't. They either
or they
can't
can't
or
see
they
it, or
won't.
they won't see it.
I don't know
And
if
that's
which one is
actually
worse, but yeah.
worse
Yeah.
than claiming your badness. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I
Uh
like that you said that because that's
I
important.
I know that self-love and narcissism are, as you said, pretty much opposites. And I 100% agree with you. But for those that are having a hard time with this idea that they are opposites, let's say that on one, just for the devil's advocate, if one end of the spectrum is self-love, whole and complete and wholesome, and the other side of the spectrum is like you go all the way and you're a narcissist now. I would like to talk about where that line is drawn, where it's not narcissism, it's just self love, or it's not self love, it's just narcissism. And I have a really simple way to decide where the line should be. And then we can kind of dive into it. I think that the biggest line in the sand is when you stop loving others as yourself and you start thinking you are either better or that you deserve more or that your happiness has to come at the expense of someone else's well-being. I think that you need to stop and take a look at yourself and like actually take a look like narcissists and yourself at yourself and be like, am I doing this for the greater good, or am I kind of stepping into, and that's the thing, like if you think that you can love yourself, and if you're the kind of person that can fully love themselves as you love someone else, uh and not do that, I think you're good. I don't think one day a switch gets flipped and now all of a sudden you are just better than it. I just don't think it works that way. The kind of person you are is the kind of self-loving person that you will be. You know what
I
I
would
mean?
basically agree with this line in the sand that you have drawn. I think it's a
Mhm.
good way to tell what side of the spectrum you might be on in any given moment. Like, is this detrimental to other people is a
Yeah,
good marker or not? Because usually when you're in a really healthy self-loving space, it's going to benefit everyone around you,
absolutely.
right? It's the whole metaphor of filling your own cup first, not only filling your own cup, filling your own cup first so that your cup overfloweth to everyone around you, right? And you become
Yeah.
a blessing. But I think in the true definition of self-love, you don't feel or believe that you are more valuable than other people. You
Absolutely.
believe that you're just as valuable as other people, and you see other people's worth and value too, the same way you see it in yourself.
How many of you listening, obviously I'm never going to know this, but uh just take a minute and think about, if ever in your life, or even maybe right now, do you feel that you see yourself less valuable or less favorably than either others see you? Like, do you think other people think you as more valuable than you think you are? Or do you see yourself less valuable than others? Either right now or any time in your life, have you ever felt that way? And if the answer is yes, I felt that way at one point or another, or I feel it right now, then that is where you need to fill your own cup. Fill your own damn cup. It helps everyone. It helps
Word.
the world.
Because here's what happens when you don't, which is where we go into the narcissistic territory. Because I really feel that narcissistic people, at least the ones that I've met and, dated and
In
been
our
with, and,
experience.
and in my personal experience, I would say that narcissists actually don't love themselves, which is why they have to
100%.
be such energy vampires and get love and get attention and get affection from everyone around them.
Yeah. And I would say that, yes, absolutely. Narcissism is the toxic version of what can happen if you don't love yourself is you start to, you know how when you, the guys that drive the really big trucks and there's that thought in your head of like, do they have a tiny penis? And I know this isn't like, I don't know if this is a popular thing, but where I grew up, if somebody was driving, they have something to prove, right? You have something to prove. You have something to prove. If you are like showboating, if you have to tell everyone how successful you are, if you must show how rich you are, not because it's a nice thing to do for your friends, but because you have to do it, you need to overcompensate. You need something to prove. And if that's the case, that I think is not only a narcissistic trait, but a very much sign of lack of self-love. It is quite the opposite of what we are talking about. And I think that's the point Kelsey's trying to make. It is the opposite. It's a lack of self-love. Think of anybody that in your life that you know who needs to tell you how successful they are. Are they the kind of person that needs to overcompensate? The answer is probably yes.
Yeah. And I just want to interject here and place this as an overlay onto the whole episode. We're not saying that narcissists are bad people and self-lovers are good people. Because
Absolutely
it's
not.
easy to, come to that conclusion based on the argument we're trying to make and while we're advocating for self-love. But we have to have a lot of compassion for narcissistic people because they don't just become like this for nothing. They don't
Right.
adapt in this way for no reason. It happens usually because they grow up in a household where they feel or they learn that it's every man for themselves. And so from a young age, and the only way that they can get their needs met and get what they want and get love and affection is to manipulate others and to turn on the charm and to grow into this narcissistic adult. Okay, so people don't just choose to be narcissistic, right? It happens to them, unfortunately, because of really bad like relationship dynamics in their family growing up in their household, and so they become like this. So let's just place that blanket of compassion on the whole episode.
I'm
And if
really hearing loudly in my ears all of the survivors of narcissistic abuse being like, screw them. Why do they get compassion?
screw compassion.
And you know what? We agree with that too, because at the end of the day,
Yeah, I've been there.
all you can do, exactly. All you can do is stay in your lane, clean up your side of the street. And if that for you means having a little bit of compassion for your past relationships so that you can be a little freer from it, if that means you need to set very firm boundaries for those that just can't, uh, they just can't show you the love and respect and compassion that you deserve, then that's what you need to do. So we are never, ever on this show going to be like, this is what you got to do to live a good life. No, we're giving you options. We are 100% at the end of the day only responsible for our path and whatever that path means for you to give you more freedom, ease, joy, fulfillment, love in your life. And oh my God, self-love is so important to that. So anyway, just want to put that out there. We all have that one person or maybe two in our past that we will never show compassion to because I'm just not that evolved. Okay. So sometimes, maybe in the next life, but in this one, you're not getting it from
Well,
me.
I think
I need a heal.
compassion too can be separate from like forgiving in the 3D.
Of course. Yes.
You can still extend compassion to someone from afar and never ever want to see their fucking face again. Okay.
Yes.
Let's make that very clear.
And when we swear, it's because we're talking to our past selves. Okay. Like trying to heal. But no, it's true. And I definitely agree. Compassion and just being able to acknowledge, not be empathetic towards, not show love for, acknowledge that nobody just wakes up and is going to screw you over. Like, that's just not how it works. There's a lot that has to happen for the experience. And we also can't ignore the fact, oh, I might get in trouble for this one. Hold on. We can't ignore the fact, Kelsey, be with me here. Okay. Take my hand from the higher perspective that it's that on some level, our souls know what they are doing. Okay. And there is an agreement on all sides for every experience. Don't come at me.
Okay, actually, there's someone else who agrees with you. I was just reading an article on this. So last night, in preparation to do research for this episode, I was reading a Teal Swan article. And she has a couple videos and articles that are pretty controversially stating that to be codependent and to be a narcissist is the same thing, but on opposite ends of the spectrum. And she was explaining how, from a law of attraction perspective, how narcissists and codependents always find each other because the key vibrational element that they both are vibrating at is a lack of self-love. And that's what makes them a perfect vibrational match. And also they are compatible, not in a healthy way, but in the sense of, the codependent is the overgiver and the narcissist is the overtaker.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
so
I think anyone can agree with that.
That supports your argument and what you were saying of, from a universal standpoint, there are some agreements going on here that consciously, and from a people perspective, from yourself in this body perspective, you're probably not super stoked about, but on some level, you may have had a hand, or at least vibrationally, there is a reason why it's
our
a match.
souls know what we're doing for your highest good.
I thought that was interesting. The whole, because people make codependent people out to be like, oh, such the victim, but really they're kind of playing the same game as the narcissist, but it's a little more covert. Which we won't get into that. That's for another episode. But what I do want to get into is, according to, what website am I on? clevelandclinic.org, the traits of a narcissist. So we can go through each one and dissect, and I will, Lindsay and I will kind of spell out how this is very different from loving yourself in a healthy, wholesome way. Not in a way where you are better or more important than other people, but in a way where you are important in the world, just like everybody else. So here we go. According to this website, healthcare providers diagnose NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, when you have at least 5 of the following characteristics. So the first one says overinflated sense of self-importance. Like we said, people who genuinely love themselves, they don't think they're more important than other people, which I think is what they mean by overinflated.
How do you know if somebody has an overinflated view of self-importance? How do you know? Well, because they either tell you or you see them act that way, in which case you end up believing that. So if they're telling you or they're acting this way, that means they're overcompensating, which is exactly what we were saying. So if they're showing it in any way that tells you it's overinflated, it's a lack, guys. Okay, go. Sorry.
Okay, so the next one, this one was interesting. Actually, okay, I'm going to read it to you and then I'll tell you my thoughts. So it says another characteristic that people use to diagnose narcissists is constant thoughts about being more successful, powerful, smart, loved, or attractive than others.
Thoughts? How do you know someone's thoughts? We need to figure this out.
Right. First of all, how are you getting into these people's heads? Second of all, I actually don't think this is really true. I think if narcissists have these thoughts, that it's like a thought that they've built in their mind so many times to overcompensate for their true belief, which is like the exact opposite. So if they believe that they are unlovable because of their family dynamic, or they believe that they can't be successful, then they're going to overcompensate by birthing a part inside of themselves. It's like, I can do anything. I'm better than anyone, to try and, like drown out the true limiting belief, which we all do with different things to certain degrees. But I actually don't think that narcissists have constant thoughts that like are so, confident. I don't think that at all. I think that they're lacking in them a lot.
Well, yes. And here again. The reason we looked up this definition and the reason Kelsey's reading it now is because before we hit record, I wanted to make sure that we weren't using narcissist the way that society has. It's just such a blanket term, right?
Right. For people will say anything and everyone is a narcissist. So we're going off like the more clinical definition here.
The more clinical definition. And also, again, we are in no way medically trained. Anybody that comes to me as a narcissist is out of my scope as a hypnotherapist. So I would need to be working with a psychologist or a psychiatrist in order to even treat somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. And I just wouldn't, because it's not my thing. It's not what I desire to do. So I don't do it. There's a reason that it is out of scope. So take what we're saying as you will with a grain of salt, throw it all out if you want. But I think it's important to have different perspectives when we're talking about something, because there is a lot that psychologists do not know. Nobody knows everything. I don't care what job you're in, you don't know everything. And at 10 years down the line, 20, you're going to realize everything you don't know, especially in the mental health field. So we're going to keep chugging along, throw it out if you want, but I think this is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So another one says feelings of superiority and desire to only associate with high status people. That's kind of funny. So
That
feelings
reminds
of
me of an ex.
superiority, yeah, is basically, the same. Self-importance, superiority meaning you feel that you are better than other people, more deserving than other people, more whatever than other people, when really to love yourself is not to think that you're superior to other people. It's to just celebrate your awesomeness. It's like the same way that we don't say that an orange is better than like a lemon. They're too different to compare. They're two completely different things, right? So you wouldn't say like, I'm better than such and such. Maybe like at playing the piano, you might be better than someone. Like that would be a fact, right? Or maybe like Lindsay and I are better at podcasting than someone who's never done it. But that doesn't mean fundamentally as a person, we are better or more valuable or more deserving. And when you have a healthy sense of self-love, you can actually heal your deserving wounds, your wounds of unworthiness, and your wounds of feeling like everyone else is better than you. It's a delusion in either scope. If you're a narcissist and you think you're better than everyone, that's delusional. And also, if you think everyone else is better and more deserving than you, that's another delusion.
But somehow, see, that is so good. And somehow the latter is so much more acceptable as society. Like, it's okay if you don't love yourself, but if you love yourself too much, you might be like, when did we learn that? When did that
think
become
the story
true?
that you told at the beginning was like the seed for that to be planted forever and ever. But we're taking the weeds out today, guys. We are picking these weeds out of the garden.
So redonk, you guys. Okay, go.
So another one, need for excessive admiration, right?
See,
this is the energy vampire coming into play.
That is just textbook. Yeah. Who needs attention if they are giving it to themselves in abundance? Who needs attention from others? Who needs to tell people how important they are? Who needs to show, I'm going to show you how big my truck is, but don't make me take my pants off. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm sorry. But you know what I mean? Like I'm going to let you see what I want you to see, because don't you dare look behind the curtain. That screams that to me. When you say, when I read stuff like this, it's like the need to tell people how important you are. Don't ever look behind the curtain, because you will see something I do not want you to see.
Basically, in reading this, it's really just outlining a very insecure person. Yeah. And I think when you build up your self-worth in a healthy way and you love yourself in a healthy way, you feel more secure. You feel more empowered. I feel
so bad for people driving big trucks. I'm so sorry. If you drive, I have no predispositions or no presuppositions about what you're carrying. It's just something I heard when I was a kid. Maybe not a kid. Maybe I did hear it when I was a kid. I don't know. I had a messed up childhood, but it's just something you hear. I know we all have our own examples of like, if you're showing me this, then this tells me this about you, kind of thing. So it's just one example. I'm sorry if you have a
you need to stop apologizing. It's fine. It's our podcast. We're allowed to say whatever we want. People probably think it's funny. Don't worry.
You worry too much. Big truck guys. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the next one, sense of entitlement, which is, same, thinking you're better, more deserving than other people. This one's interesting. There's some juice here to talk about. This one says willingness to take advantage of others to achieve goals,
which is what we said. Yeah, don't step on people.
I actually think a lot of narcissists, yes, some do this knowingly, but I think a lot do this unknowingly because they're not connected to other people. They're not attuned to the people around them. It just says willingness to take advantage of others to achieve goals.
100%. Yeah.
But I think
that I agree with.
A lot of narcissists are doing it knowingly and a lot are doing it unknowingly. But in either case, narcissists can't attune to other people's emotions and feelings. They're not going to take you in as a part of themselves. I'll tell you that much, which is why to date one is like the most suffocating, debilitating experience, and why a lot of women end up at my self-love retreats, because they just divorced from a freaking narcissist who like ruined their sense of self. So I
Yeah.
get it. Trust me. But when you love yourself, you are definitely not willing to take advantage of others to achieve your own goals, because when you love yourself, like I said, on the macro, you love all, you love everyone. It's a spiritual experience of oneness. So to hurt someone else, to take advantage of someone else, would just be to be hurting yourself.
Yeah. And I think
So
just
people who
just as
really genuinely love themselves, they don't do that, at least without, not without feeling pain in themselves.
and I think it's just as an aside, I think it's because part of it is because when you do love yourself, you actually get to experience the absolute abundance of love that there is out there. Like you're experiencing love in its most potent, pure form. Self-love, I think, is one of the most potent self-loves you can have because you need nothing else outside of you. And so when you experience that abundance, you know that abundance exists everywhere. So when someone else succeeds, it's not like, oh, they're taking from me. It's, oh my gosh, abundance has just expanded even more. There's enough for everyone, always, all the time. And that is a level of peace that I wish on everyone, because when you can stop worrying about there being enough for you, it's just so freeing. And so the opposite end, the lack of, would be like, oh, I have to do it because if they do it, they're taking it off my plate. When that's another delusion. It's just non-existent. So the basis of self-love is realizing that there is abundance of love and success and money and everything. Everything. There's no lack. And that's very powerful to believe.
Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. But if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual visual aids and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really
Yeah.
cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibin' It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.